Fasting should be planned around your life. Your life should not be planned around fasting. What's up, everybody? Schuyler here, founder of Reach Fat Loss and Fitness, where our goal is to help you lose fat, build muscle, get in the best shape of your life. And today we are going to be going over a video released by the great Matt D'Avella. Matt has been an inspiration of mine in terms of content creation, and he's done a lot of awesome challenges that he's documented. And today we are reacting to his video, I Tried Intermittent Fasting for 30 Days. Now, if you're new to the channel, my fat loss program involved using fasting as a tool for fat loss, and we get really, really awesome results, as you can see here. And so we're gonna go over this video. If you are looking for a quick starter guide of how to get started with fasting, check the link in the description of this video. You can grab that for free, and that's going to get you going and seeing some awesome results with fasting. With that being said, let's get into this video.
All right, this is it. Fast number one starts now.
I tried intermittent fasting every day for 30 days. You may have heard of it before.
A trendy new weight loss method has been getting a lot of buzz lately, and it is called intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting.
For the uninitiated, intermittent fasting.
Not intermediate fasting. I have quite a few people who say that to me. Intermediate fasting. It's intermittent.
Fasting isn't a diet, and it's not about what you eat. It's all about when you eat. The most common version is a 16/8 fast. You fast for 16 hours and eat during an 8-hour window. I tried and failed at intermittent fasting a couple years ago, but I wanted to give it another shot. And since on my first attempt,
I wonder why he failed. Oh, he couldn't even do it? That's interesting. We're going to dive into that.
Couldn't even do it for 16 hours a day. I decided to make it even harder on myself by fasting 18 hours a day this time. I want to learn more about the latest science on fasting. Is it a great strategy for weight loss? Does it help us live longer? Or is it all just a bunch of hype? Let's find out over the next 30 days. This video is sponsored by Canva. More on them later. Thank God coffee doesn't have any calories in it. Otherwise, I don't think I'd be able to make it until day 30. One of the first things I noticed as I made my way through my first 18-hour fast is how rarely I actually allow myself to get hungry. Of course, it happens, like when I'm busy working on a project or running around doing chores all day, but that's far from typical. As I noticed my stomach growl.
This dude's cinematography is just perfection. Like, the production value of his videos is so incredible. I mean, as I'm looking at him, he's got 3.74 million subscribers, so it's very well deserved. But it's like short film. It's like a mini movie.
And grumble through the first few hours of the day, I realized it'd been years since I actually let myself become hungry intentionally. And yes, this is of course a fortunate position to be in, but it's one that so many of us are faced with today. When you think about it, this is a relatively new problem for humans. For tens of thousands of years, we've largely faced scarcity when it comes to food. But many of us living in high-income countries have the exact opposite problem. The moment that we have a slight craving, we can raid our pantry, dig into our fridge, or open up our phone and order the entire Taco Bell menu. He's gonna need a bigger toilet. Food on demand has become the norm, but according to Dr. Sachin Panda, author of The Circadian Code and one of the leading experts on intermittent fasting, that's not how we evolved to digest food.
For 100 years, nutrition science has taught us to count calories and watch carbs, protein, and fat in our diet. And what we discovered is, it's not only what you eat, when you eat also matters.
Dr. Panda's research suggests that every organ in our body, including our digestive system, is tied directly to our circadian rhythm. When we stop eating at night, an internal clock starts ticking. This fast initiates a cascade of processes that can help aid digestion, improve metabolic function, and maybe even prevent chronic disease.
Intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating has enabled millions of people to improve their health, increase their performance, and also help them to prevent many chronic disease.
According to Dr. Panda, in order to get all the benefits of intermittent fasting, you shouldn't consume a single calorie for 12 to 16 hours a day. And that means you need to cut out all late-night snacking and drinking. But that can be difficult for those of us with deeply ingrained habits.
First and foremost, this is a super cool perspective. So I'm a firm believer. I really believe intermittent fasting can be great for weight loss, but in terms of the health benefits, you're going to get way more when you extend. We'll dig a little bit into the hunger side of things because I work with my clients on this, and many of them do not experience a ton of hunger. There's like blips, but the science is showing that around hour 12 is where ghrelin spikes the most, and then it's downhill from there. Ghrelin being the hunger hormone. So you're really technically at your hungriest if you do it the right way 12 hours after eating. So if you're stopping at 8 p.m., 8 a.m. the next day, and then hunger starts to drop over time. So super interesting just how intermittent fasting and extended fasting kind of does this interweaving.
So I just finished my first fast. I went a little bit over the 18 hours. I actually fasted for 19 hours, 19 minutes. I've always had a bit of a complicated relationship with food. I tend to eat when I get really stressed, bored, or overwhelmed.
Who else? That's another reason why I love fasting, right? Because you're teaching yourself, okay, I don't need to turn to food when I go past this point, when I'm experiencing stress or when I'm bored. And so it forces you to adapt. Of like, what am I going to do instead? I'm going to be more productive. Am I just going to grab my phone and scroll? But it basically opens you up to realize how you use food as a coping mechanism, and then you can work on healing it. So
the coping mechanism that I've only recently started to notice in the past couple of years. And so one of my big goals in trying intermittent fasting again is to try to get more intentional about my relationship with food. And yeah, if I could cut off an extra 5 pounds of weight that I put on earlier this year, that wouldn't hurt either. So I'm using an app called Zero. They're not a sponsor,
Best
just
app.
a helpful app that's allowing me to track the beginning and end of each of my fasts. It's nice to see my progress bar fill up as I reach my goal. Since I'm very rules oriented, it's nice to have hard limits on when I can and can't eat. So I'm about a week in, and one thing that I've noticed is that my energy levels are dropping off like crazy in the middle of the day. When I wake up, my energy levels start to rise. Then around 12 p.m. or so, they fall off a cliff. About an hour after my first meal, they start to rebound and then slowly fall back off a cliff.
we call this insulin response. So this is why things play together so importantly. Like people who just hop on intermittent fasting or fasting typically have a difficult time or a more difficult time losing weight than the people who hop on fasting and address their diet, right? And address sleep and address stress levels. So specifically with my program, like we take a look at the full picture because a lot of these things interplay. But what you're seeing here is most likely he's eating, he's spiking his blood sugar levels, his body's releasing insulin to push that sugar into the cells. And when insulin is released, typically there's an energy crash. And so, you eat, you feel good, and then you feel that energy drop off. And that happening in the morning is also telling me he probably is not eating the best meals before bed, his last meal of the day. And then his body's struggling to be fat adapted. Again, like fasting is fantastic and it has various health benefits, but it's going to be easier if you clean up your diet. So that's something to keep in mind.
As I head to bed. I don't know if this is a common thing that people experience, but I'm up to 2 coffees minimum, doing my best to stay productive, but it's kind of difficult. Intermittent fasting has gotten wildly popular over the past few years, and like every trend in the nutrition world, it's been widely received, all experts agree on it, and there's absolutely no confusion about its benefits.
Some new evidence suggests that intermittent fasting could provide many health benefits beyond weight loss.
A new study says intermittent fasting does not even help you shed pounds.
What the authors posit is improving obesity, improving insulin resistance, cholesterol, hypertension, inflammation.
Intermittent fasting does more harm than good.
Intermittent fasting enhances the ability of cells to cope with stress.
A new study out scientists discovering there may be 0 benefits to the popular intermittent fasting diet.
The new study is asking whether going hungry could be the key to a healthier and even longer life.
Participants who were engaged in intermittent fasting had significantly higher mortality rates for all-cause and heart disease.
The study finding that sometimes those switches can help reduce obesity, high cholesterol, blood pressure, and inflammation.
It may also be linked to cancer.
I would rather somebody ate a couple Girl Scout cookies in the morning than nothing at all.
Very eye-opening. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow. Wow. This is the world we live in. That judging by her hair, I don't want to know anything more about her, but that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, not only do we have the most insanely processed food out there, I'm sorry for you Girl Scout cookie lovers, but it's pure carbs, which means, again, massive insulin spike. It's going to tank. Your energy is going to go wild. Your cravings are going to be an all-time high. You're going to be overeating the rest of the day. So interesting. I understand the confusion with studies because studies have a lot of different factors. There's different funders for different studies, but someone to say that.
Like me, you might be thinking, what the f***? Does it work or not? Does it help you lose weight or is it going to kill you? Now, I'm no expert and I don't have a daytime talk show, but here's the best that I've been able to understand it. The truth falls somewhere in the middle. It isn't a magic bullet and it doesn't cause cancer. And whether you should do it yourself really depends on your current habits and goals. Dr. Peter Attia, author of Outlive, The Science and Art of Longevity, recently changed his opinion on intermittent fasting. While he previously thought fasting alone provided a lot of benefits, he now thinks it mostly has to do with caloric restriction.
when people talk.
Peter T is a very smart dude too, and I've seen his stuff, and there's stuff I really, really agree with, and of course, just like everybody, there's stuff that I'm not sure if I agree with. I'm interested to see his take.
About how time-restricted feeding is helping them lose weight and manage insulin resistance and things like that. I think it appears that that's all due to reduced caloric intake. It's just harder to eat more during a narrower window.
But if you're not overweight and you're more on the lean side, doing regular fasts of 18 hours or more could be detrimental. Dr. Attia again.
I think you need to ask yourself before you go on an aggressive TRF regimen, how much muscle mass can you afford to lose? And if the answer is none, which is, it should be the answer for most people, by the way, then you got to make sure you're not restricting protein and that you're thinking about when you can refuel in relation to exercise.
What also seems to be true is that regularly eating late at night can cause issues with your metabolic functions and blood sugar levels. So doing something like Dr. Sachin Panda's circadian rhythm fasting, by lining up your eating closely with sunrise and sunset, could give you both the benefits of restricted caloric intake and improved metabolic function.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So I've seen a lot of research and heard a lot of people speak on how time-restricted feeding is actually more effective than intermittent fasting for the health benefits. Intermittent fasting being typically the last meal being at the end of the day, whereas time-restricted feeding, the last meal being more of like the middle to the day. So like lunch to breakfast type of fasting, which makes sense, right? Because if you're going to bed and you don't have anything in your stomach, you're going to get higher quality sleep. I experienced this last night where I finished eating maybe like 3 hours earlier than normal, and my sleep was awesome last night. So super, super interesting on that aspect. But you also got to think about, like, your body spends a certain amount of energy on digesting food, right? And if you're eating all day, there's no doubt about it, you're consistently digesting. There's never a point where your stomach is truly empty. But when you fast, you give your body the opportunity to work through it. Now, what is it going to do with that energy, right? Just in theory, because there's studies, there's funding, all that stuff. Like, we really got to think about this from a practical angle. If you have eliminated the food in your stomach, where is that energy going to go? Probably going to go to other things, whether that is more brain health, whether it's healing old cells, recycling old cells, whether it is just more energy in general, right? And so I understand there's studies out there. I respect the people that really dig into it, really look into it, but it's just hard for someone to convince me that there's not more benefits than just the caloric restriction that comes from fasting. So
keep in mind that I'm not an expert, and none of the experts can seem to agree on what intermittent fasting does and what its benefits are. So like everything, you're going to have to try for yourself to see what works best for you. And when it comes to me, I'm starting to realize that maybe with this 18-hour fast, I've bitten off more than I can chew.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize
thumbnails for my YouTube
with Matt, like, the food you eat matters when you're eating, because if you're eating food that is high carb, high sugar, you're eating more processed food with processed ingredients, you're not going to feel as good in your fast. And I've seen it time and time again with my clients. When you clean up your diet, you clean up the ingredients, you clean up the quality of your food, not even having to count calories or count macros, you're able to feel better, plain and simple. I'm getting distracted by this ad. He's doing such a good job.
Intermittent fasting 101, start cooking before it's time to eat. I have made this mistake far too many times where I end up fasting for an additional hour or two just because I haven't prepared a single thing to eat. I think I've fully gotten over the hump now. My energy levels are really consistent throughout the day.
Good.
I definitely don't have that afternoon crash anymore.
So either he cleaned up his diet or his body was finally able to work through all the excess glucose and sugar that his body had been storing. So, sweet.
I'm snacking so much less than I normally would. In the past, I would snack late into the night. I would drink alcohol before bed. I'd wake up in the morning. I'd have granola. I'd be eating constantly. Yeah, I feel better. I feel good. As this experiment continued, I really tried to make the most out of my 6-hour eating window. I paid close attention to each of my cravings, and I started to stack up fast after fast. 18 hours, 33 minutes. So today got unexpectedly busy, and I have gone 22 hours and 39 minutes without eating.
My man.
I'm feeling really on edge, and so I want to measure my blood pressure to see if anything has changed. 114/74. It's about average, maybe a little bit higher than average. That taught me nothing. I'm finding that this attempt at intermittent fasting has been so much more...
24 is like the minimum, in my opinion, for really starting to get the health benefits and really understanding how to function without food and feel good while doing it. Again, food you do matters, doing fasting the correct way. Supplementation matters. I really believe it's going to become more and more well accepted over the next few years, more and more of the norm because of how good you can feel on it and how easy it makes fat loss and getting all these health benefits. And I know that sounds crazy. Every single time I say it, I always get someone that's just like, no, I could never fast for 24 hours. You would be surprised how good you feel when you do it the right way. You eat the right foods before, you consume the right supplementation during, you stay busy, way less difficult than you think.
Successful than my first try. Intermittent fasting was a pain in the and I think the main reason is that I allowed more flexibility when I started and stopped my fasts. This technically goes against Dr. Panda's recommendation.
You have to be consistent to take advantage of this anticipatory activity of our clock.
But I personally loosened up with this guideline. There are so many things that we already have to think about when it comes to our health. And so often it's a struggle to even get the basics right. I mean, you guys saw the size of that bread on my tuna mill. But giving myself permission to lighten up, to do the best that I could, and to focus on just one single metric, hitting my 18-hour fast every day, has proved to be the best way for me to reach my goal.
Huge! Let's go, Matt. This is a big deal. I am the biggest fan of flexibility with fasting. I've spoken to a lot of people who say, oh, I used to do intermittent fasting and it worked great. And I say, why do you stop? And they say, I don't know, I just kind of stopped. And what that tells me is they were probably too rigid. Right? They felt like they had to do it 7 days a week. They felt like they had to stop eating by 8, start eating after 12, and if they didn't, they failed and they ruined it all. Fasting should be planned around your life. Your life should not be planned around fasting, which means if someone comes into town that you haven't seen in a while, they want to take you to breakfast, go to breakfast. Which means if you are super busy at night and you normally eat dinner, don't eat dinner. Have lunch be the last meal of the day. I really have seen some awesome benefits from a fat loss perspective as well from the flexibility aspect of fasting. And in my mind, it makes sense because it's like your body's not getting adapted to a schedule, so your metabolism doesn't really know what to expect. Whereas if you're intermittent fasting every single day, your metabolism kind of knows, okay, my first meal is going to come around 12 or after, so I shouldn't expect anything in the morning. So I'm glad he mentioned that because, yeah, I've seen experts say like you should keep it very similar the same day. From my clients, I've noticed they seem to have better weight loss results if they're very flexible with it. But regardless, from a lifestyle perspective of making this last long term, flexibility is everything. Everything.
And there it is, my 30th and final fast.
I lost 5 pounds over the past 30 days to hit my goal, which means I was able to significantly reduce my caloric intake. And if my SMART scale is to be trusted, my body fat percentage also went down over this time. The biggest health benefit I gained by far has been cutting down on calories after 6 or 7 p.m. Between snacks and alcohol, I really did cut down on a lot of those calories that were motivated by stress, overwhelm, or boredom. While I was able to maintain my strength at the gym, I didn't feel like I was getting any positive gains. I'm guessing it's because I wasn't eating enough protein during this time. So I can definitely see Dr. Peter Attia's concern that this type of daily fast...
Essential amino acids. Little hack for you. Perfect aminos. Link in the description for my review.
...could limit caloric intake too much, at least for someone like me. I personally love fasting, and I've decided to try to make it 1 full year. But I'm going to lighten up my fasting window a bit and try a circadian fast instead. So if you want to find out how that goes, and if you want other 30-day experiments on self-development, subscribe. See you soon. That's it.
Good stuff, Matt. Good stuff. I love this stuff. I love seeing people test it. I love seeing like the areas that they can tweak. I love to see the areas they get right, they nail. This is an awesome example. Like 5 pounds in 30 days for not cutting out a single food and just changing your window is awesome. Obviously, everyone's results are going to differ, and it also depends on the food that you are eating. Like he said, it's not a magic bullet. You can't fast and then eat whatever you want in your eating window and lose weight, right? You have to be intentional. It blends. It's a big blend of the fasting, the nutrition, the exercise. So loved watching this. If you guys have anything else in the health realm that you'd like me to review, I'd love if you could leave me a comment below. Also, leave me a comment about your thoughts on this video, on what Matt did. If you've done intermittent fasting, I put a lot of effort into these videos, and I'd love to hear from you down below. So, and again, if you're learning how to get started with fasting, what other pitfalls to avoid, what other shifts you can make to make it easier, check out the link in the description of this video for our beginner's fasting guide that's going to get you started. But with that being said, I appreciate you. Make sure to subscribe, make sure to like this video, and of course, as always, make sure to eat smart, move more, sleep deep, and be grateful for this moment. I'll see you in the next video.